How is the human brain like the night sky? How does one go from Omaha, Nebraska to Los Angeles, California? Answering these questions today, I give you a sage, a sensei, a scholar who has researched, honed, taught, and refined the immersive arts. Today I give you Spencer Williams of Walk the Night Immersive.
If you start with something that's familiar and grow out from bang, explosions, and we had the chainsaws brought out and fire breathing. Audiences are only getting more and more agency. There are more neurons firing in our brains than there are stars in the sky. It is as vast and unexplorable as every story told is told through the mind of the person that experiences it. The same way that you and I are interacting right now is the same way that you and I look at stars.
Hi, I'm Nathaniel Sky, the host of the Immersion Nation podcast. Here, the masters of immersive experience create and conjure, muse and imagine the cultural revolution that is unfolding before us. That is immersive entertainment. Welcome. Today's episode is actually a bit of an experiment. The conversation has been divided into two parts because it wound up being such an in-depth look at immersion, look at the way that audiences and guests and just people interact with the situations and environments that they're presented with. The second episode will air next week, and we'll kick off with our Make It Immersive segment, which is a bit different than you have heard in the past. Spencer Williams actually walks me through some version of a live roleplay experience, similar to what they do with Tales by Candlelight. Spencer, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you.
Thanks for coming on.
My pleasure.
So to just hop right into it, I do have to ask, what is your favorite fictional or fantasy world?
I'm a strange one in that. The only constant to my favorite fictional world is a sort of magic realism.
Okay.
Neil Gaiman's fantastic with it.
Yes.
And of course I forget the name of it. 100 Years of Solitude, or is it 1,000 Years of Solitude?
Rings a bell, but I'm not directly. Oh, Gabriel Garcia Marquez.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh, yes.
The magic realism that exists there. It's always those. Tom Robbins is also has worlds with these sort of secrets that are unlocked and open up the mind. So it's not that I want to live in Narnia or a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. I'm just really interested in the things that emerge. Yeah, the fantastic that emerges within the everyday. And that's a non-answer. I totally realize it. But
that's a phenomenal answer. I mean, it's not specific, which is totally fine. And unless you want to make it more specific, I'm very happy leaving that as ambiguous as it is for the moment, because I think it actually has potential to go in cool directions later in the show here.
I think so too. I put it this way. I have found it takes me in interesting directions throughout my career.
Yeah. That, oh man. And Gaiman is brilliant. I've not read nearly enough Marquez, but that I definitely share a closely aligned appreciation of that world. There's just something about kind of the subtlety and nuance of having something that's just not in your face out of this world, but like something that seems like it could just show up one day and become part of the real world.
For me, that magic realism or magic is as much a psychological experience as it is something tangible. And for me, that magic realism is it's just, it gets me going. I'm too excited about it.
Yeah, I love it. Um, so I'm curious, could you explain or tell a little bit about your path with immersion? What brought you to immersion in the first place? Because before we started recording here, you were explaining that you had moved from Omaha to LA. How did you find your way into immersive entertainment, immersive theater, immersive arts
Mhm.
in Omaha in the first place? And then what kind of brought you to LA from there?
Oh, what's funny is it actually didn't start in Omaha.
Oh,
A lot, I think a lot of us strangely came to this within the same like couple within the same sort of small span when it all began. So I'm in my sixth, seventh year in this field, and I've found that a lot of us all kind of came to it at the same time, or this first batch, we'll call us. The way that I came to it was actually being hired again, like a lot of other folks, to direct and produce a haunted house, or rather a haunted corn maze for a pumpkin patch.
oh, all
Um,
right.
yeah, I was in. I've been in LA since graduation, pretty much. Was directing, and then got started getting into documentary from directing because I liked the story kind of emerging in front of me, rather than being pre-scripted. It just felt more like an event, the documentary stuff. And so at
Mhm.
around the same time that I was thinking, I want to at least find something that merges more of this in the craft that I can start doing more of. I get this call and an opportunity to direct a haunted corn maze, and it started where I was thinking, well, this will be something new, right? Then I thought about how to do it, to put a narrative in a haunted corn maze. Titus Andronicus mixed with a Texas Chainsaw Massacre came to mind, and yeah, it all kind of went crazy from there. And midway through, I went to Sleep No More, the great immersive converter for a lot of other people.
Yeah, yeah.
And when you see something else being done so brilliantly by somebody else who was doing it before you were doing it, some people would be put off by that, but I was so excited, because it meant that I wasn't alone. It meant that there were more people doing things like this.
Yeah,
Uh,
it shows you that there's something else that is possible out there that, like, oh, it's a template, it's a model, it's the proof of concept that suddenly shows that people want this.
exactly. Um, so, so I saw Sleep No More and got two one-on-ones in one night, which is kind of an anomaly. And it everything that the track that I was already on just became completely cemented. There
Mhm.
was really no going back for me. Everything, all of the work that I was trying to get within the entertainment industry has now pretty much. I'm always happy to take those gigs. They're great jobs to get, but the flat out calling is immersive, hands down. That was the beginning with the haunted corn maze. Haunted corn maze with the through line. A lot, like I know a lot of people do it that way, coming in through haunts.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
certainly. I mean,
and
everybody kind of funneled from or split off from haunts, arguably, it seems like, into a bunch went to escape room and a bunch went to kind of the less explored edge of immersive theater that is now blooming, blossoming, what have you.
well, it's an easy behavioral tie-in, right? When people are going to a haunted house, there's a behavior that is expected to have. The ask is pretty easy of an audience because it's baked into the the cultural behavior that when you go to a haunted house, you're going to be moving around, you're going to be going into places that you normally wouldn't and that are uncomfortable just at a baseline. So unlike with if I were to mount something in the spring, there is more subconscious what the blank am I doing that will happen
Right,
from a
right.
given audience member. But if you start with something that's familiar and grow out from there, you you can it's turning the water up to a boil slowly for the frog, rather than throwing it in hot water right
Yeah,
away.
yeah,
Um,
no, that makes a lot of sense.
in this case, we'll call the boiling enlightenment rather than death and eating. But
Experimenting.
haunts. So maybe someone, yeah, maybe the haunt is more apt for that. So anyway, the great thing about that with what I started out with, not just doing a haunt, but with doing one in a corn maze, is I literally grew my venue. The way that it's done, right? You get the corn grows in rows, 10 feet wide, and you've got parameters, and then you just carve out where the seeds are going to be allowed to grow and where they're not. So I carved the exact path. I carved out where my backstage was going to be, to best facilitate that. So it was just by pure luck a really easy way to get into immersive, to start playing with people's behavior, um, and a fun way, right? As a channeling back into the 13-year-old boy, it's bang explosions, and we had the stereotypical chainsaws brought out and fire breathing, and we had people on bouncing stilts at points, and all of it surrounding Titus Andronicus, and it was oh I had a blast doing it. It was sloppy. I mean, it was my first go of it.
Gotta start
You
sloppy.
know,
Sorry, for those who don't know, what is Tritus Andronicus?
Titus Andronicus is Shakespeare's first and bloodiest play. Um, the uh,
Okay, thank you. Yeah.
so the first and bloodiest play. Everybody except for two characters end up dead. The general comes back from war, tries to retire, refuses to take over leadership. Um, so that was my start, and then I kept on designing those mazes for years. Right there on a farm, you have rotating fields that have to be fallow, and corn takes up a lot of soil nutrients, so you can't just grow corn in the same place every year. So I just designed those mazes for all of their rotating fields. In the meantime, I had gotten in touch with this incredible theater in Omaha, Nebraska, where I was raised for a time, called the
Mhm.
Bluebarn Theater.
Oh,
Um,
right, yeah, and I've seen their logo and branding, on your website. I had not looked
yeah.
into them yet, but I was curious.
Oh, they're Susan Clementover is just about the best boss. She's the artistic director there. She's about the best
Mhm.
boss I've ever had. Um, Strange just how our brains kind of connect and work together. So I basically met up with her, showed her some pictures of the Deadly Harvest was the name of the piece that I did,
Mhm.
the first haunted piece, and then said I've got this crazy idea to adapt Hamlet, but in a way that kind of goes off the rails.
And what year was that?
That was well, we started in 2013. I believe the play itself was in 2014, and that was the original Walk the Night.
Okay,
Um,
okay.
and
And
so
is that still coming out? Sorry, go ahead.
uh, Walk the Night's been a 5-year series since then. The
Mhm.
basis of it is a merger of essentially what I started doing with Titus Andronicus in that corn maze, and with the brilliance of Sleep No More. So, in other words, it provides a very concrete and accessible plot should someone want to follow that plot. That was the first Walk the Night. We had a donated Victorian mansion come to us,
Oh
and
my gosh,
then
wow.
staged Hamlet in like 1930s South, which the Southern dialect works so beautifully with Shakespearean language. And I mean, and truthfully, there's a reason why it's not called Hamlet Immersive. We took a lot of liberties in how we adapted the script. I did the same thing with Titus Andronicus in the
Yeah.
Corn Maze. Definitely the clarity, we kind of boiled it down to the clearest lines, and then kept some of the most beautiful poetry that each actor resonated with, and then beyond that, we would express it in fill in the blank ways, and that kind of grew and grew till the point that it was last year, where it was live score played in the experience,
Wow.
puppets that were fashioned before people's eyes. And last that fifth year, we got donated a nature. I wanted to say a nature reserve, a nature center that hadn't been used, and yeah, just and that was an adaptation of The Tempest, which I won't take more of your time with to describe those plots. But it's all Shakespearean plots, because for me, those are things that are really ripe to cut up and delve into. They're also like haunted houses. They're a part of the cultural
Yeah,
ethos.
they're accessible, they're understandable. It's like you take Shakespeare plus haunted house and people kind of get what that is, whereas trying to reverse engineer an explanation of what immersive theater is does not nearly go as well. So, am I understanding
Exactly.
correctly that basically you took that as a base and then have been using that in conjunction with Bluebarn to then start kind of launching some of the experiments you're doing in LA right now?
No, but the experiences that I'm doing in LA now are my company Walk the Night, and then other individual partnerships.
Okay, cool. Very cool.
Essentially, I work with companies to make immersive experiences, all based in story, but based in the core behavior. So you could say The Deadly Harvest, which was the Titus Andronicus piece, started with haunted houses. Then the Bluebarn Theater, which I, just to put in another plug for them, the space and the community that they've built there is it's actually world renowned now. They just built a new $10 million theater facility from the ground up. Oh gosh. So while they were doing that, I did an expansion and did site specific immersive theater based in Shakespeare. So truthfully, you could say that was a collaboration to make theater and an immersive experience with a lot more audience agency. And that's gone on for 5 years. And I think this is actually the first public announcement that I'm making about it. But there's going to be a major change in what we're doing and how we've been doing
all
it.
Right.
After the 5th year, it's just time for a change. Susan Clementober and I talked it over. We're still buttoning down the last of what that change is going to be. So there's nothing that I can officially announce. But at the 5-year point, it's definitely changing. And then now out here with Walk the Night, I've been working with two different collaborators for these one-on-one sort of boutique experiential pieces for the Guest and the Host Make Music and Tales by Candlelight. And that just gets more into the continuing arc for me is that with each of those experiences, audiences are only getting more and more agency. I would describe Titus Andronicus and haunted houses in general as more experiential than immersive, which is to say more of the senses are activated. Yes, there's interaction with it, but the audience agency is pretty much just the question of which pace you are going to go along the track, like a roller coaster or a ride at fill in the blank amusement park. The Walk the Night series is it's more immersive because of the choice in which one can view the content in the same way as Sleep No More, but ultimately they can't. You're not supposed to affect the outcome. Now with these boutique one-on-one pieces, you are the piece as much as the piece is itself, and the outcome is a complete reflection of who you are. So there's no way that you can't affect the pieces that I'm making right now, you being the audience member, of course. So that's my that's my arc in immersive right there.
So the first two things that come to mind, just as commentary in the last things you mentioned, one being insofar as Bluebarn's impending change, I just want to say how cool it is that the way that you explain that and kind of relate to that is, hey, it's been 5 years, it's time for a change. And I say that specifically in the context of oftentimes I think that people, once they find something that's working, the last thing that they want to do in the world is change. They're like, hey, this is working. Why would I stop? Stopping and changing is, kind of scary. It's, if nothing else, just risky. The fact that just the way that you interface with that is just like, yeah, of course it's time for change. This is just like how it works. I think that's really, really cool.
Yeah. There's a quote from Joseph Campbell, which if I guess the quote from Joseph Campbell is whatever, I'm going to butcher it, it's paraphrasing, but those who resist change are in danger of putrefaction, in other words, like becoming a corpse, of dying, which I guess if there was Joseph Campbell's a good example of a world that I would want to live in, though his world is just the world in which we live. It's just one engaged with stories and magic around it.
Yes.
So yeah, that's my long-winded way of agreeing with you and saying here.
And for anybody who's interested, who's listening, I will put that quote in its entirety and references to all of the amazing creators, artists, writers, etc., that have inspired you, Spencer, in the show notes. Just if anybody wants to take a peek, is not entirely familiar, and wants to know a little bit more. Yeah.
Oh, if you want to talk inspirations, that can go down a whole big old rabbit hole with that. Yeah, Joseph Campbell's a part of everything that I do. Read Campbell when I was 18. Yeah, it truly is that simple. No one else in who your listeners may know of from No Proscenium. He and I were talking and said that especially in Hollywood, the paper that holds Joseph Campbell's work is almost disintegrated. It's been passed around so much. But I feel like immersive itself, it's something that people will often say that they know, but aren't truly familiar with it. And I've read or listened to just about everything that Campbell has done. So yeah, major influence there. And then Shakespeare for Walk the Night, but on the site you can actually see for Walk the Night with the past productions, you can actually see the augmentary materials influence on each of the years for Walk the Night.
And before we get too deep into that rabbit hole, and we can totally come back to that, the only other thing that had really stuck out to me was the transition between the format and context of the work that you were doing in that space with Shakespearean works, with Bluebarn, et cetera, versus the boutique experiences that you have going on in LA there. Because it seems like a very drastic shift in medium from one to the other, because insofar as like between uh, both Tales by Candlelight and the guest and the host make music, like those I don't know, they seem entirely novel to me. I haven't encountered anything that's like either of them in the world of Immersion, and I'm curious what kind of led to that shift in your work. Yeah, and
Circumstance
if
in
it's
my
happenstance,
brain.
it's totally
I
okay.
don't know. It's my favorite thing to direct in Walk the Night has always been one-on-ones. So for those who aren't familiar, one-on-ones, it's something that Sleep No More is a perfect example of, but it's a singular audience experience within a sandbox universe. In other words, if you go to Sleep No More and you're lucky enough to get one of the, let's say, I think 14 one-on-ones in total that only one audience member will get throughout the course of the show. Your mask is taken off, and you are still a passive audience member, but it is just a moment of connection with you and the performer. So we did that for Walk the Night with these major different moments. The With Hamlet's monologue, the plays the thing we're in, I'll catch the conscience of the king. That, which is a relatively well-known monologue, was given in a very adapted form to one person in a dark basement stairwell. Um, they are they became hands down my
Mm-hmm.
favorite thing to direct. I only half jokingly would say if I could direct one-on-ones for the rest of my life and through for the entirety of the process, I would do that. And I, this is just as time went by doing Walk the Night, I got to do them less and less. Part of it was great because I could delegate more and more things, because the immersive was getting easier and easier to get people involved with, and people knew more and more how to do it on their own. And as the director, I was keeping the piece together. It's my main job not to just make the beautiful moments, but to make sure that those moments, especially in the case of Sandbox, where 1 hour has 15 hours of material in it, to make sure that all of those link up and are cohesive should someone want to have that experience, as much as is possible, right? But I wasn't doing it as much. Now, that's not that I made a conscious decision to then say I want to do something that's only one-on-ones. It just was where my interest went more and more. Because for me, the pieces that I've made out here are just those one-on-one pieces. They're very, very simple on the surface, but the thread that ties all of them together for me, it's the human mind. The human, it's people that go through these experiences, no matter what they are. I mean, if you are just on your phone interacting with something, that's the brain that is that is experiencing. Wow, I'm losing my my ability to speak. I guess I like this too much.
The
Uh,
experiencing versus the remembering, potentially. I don't know if that's the direction you're taking that.
the through line is the human mind. Um, the human mind, even
Right.
if it is just recreating the stories that we tell, recreating the experiences that we have, and filtering them, is ultimately what is telling our story to other people, right? Um, and that's the fascinating thing for me with psychology and neurology. Uh, like this is going to sound strange, and not to get too deep or philosophical, but the same way that you and I are interacting right now is the same way that you and I look at stars. We're actually dealing with echoes, no matter how quick or close the echo is to the source. We're filtering that information through our minds. Um, so in the same way that the light from a star that I'm seeing at night is not an instant light. That light is traveled and has gone for light years and light years and light years. And some of those stars that I'm looking at may well be
Mm-hmm.
dead to that extent. And what's the common phrase that that there are more neurons firing in our brains than there are stars in the sky. Um, Anecdotal or factual, that to me is fascinating. Every story told is told through the mind of the person that experiences it. Um, and yeah, and
Filtered
it's
through that
something that
lens.
is so vast and unexplorable. It is as vast and unexplorable as space. Now, the more concrete that we can make our experiences, the more that we can get them away from language and into just connection through the best psychological means that we have, the more effective our stories are going to be. That's not to say to affect someone with a specific brainwashing intent, but to really tell and connect with the story. And that's what ultimately boggles my own mind about the possibilities with immersive theater. So, dealing with tracks, right, you get basic human emotions, you get stop and go as far as the result of the behavior. With Sandbox or open world, where anyone can go anywhere and do anything, you're getting sort of hive mind or pack mentality or herd think. As you're looking at each of those as at each of those performances. I mean, granted, I can actually see how effective or ineffective the work is based on body language of the people that are there. Right? If I'm doing my job right, then I'm tailoring it. Um, and then in a one-on-one, when someone doesn't have a mask on and you're looking, you can see the emotional impact in real time, as close to real time as you can possibly get of what you're doing. But the with the guests and the hosts, and then with Tales by Candlelight, for me, it's you're understanding the way that someone else is retelling the story in real time.
Hello, hello.
Yo, do you go by Nathaniel or Nate?
I actually go by Sky.
Sky.
Nathaniel's my first name, but I've just always been called Sky since essentially birth. I guess that's just what happens when your parents are old
Uh-huh.
hippies. So
Hey,
there is
that's
that.
great. Sky it is. Yeah, I felt really compelled to say your name when I was talking and realized, oh, I don't know if it's Nate or Nathaniel, and it's way more, yeah, uh, knowing
A,
someone's
B, or
name.
C, one way or the other.
No, Sky's good, man. Sky's good. Names are important. Uh, Not that it has anything to do with anything, but I'm third generation Sicilian, and my mom's name is Lucia. Uh,
Oh, wow. That's a
yeah, my
beautiful name.
mom's name. Well, it's Lucia. It would be Lucia, so it's written out Lucia, but her name's Lucia.
Hmm.
Uh, my mom, so she's second generation, but she doesn't know Sicilian or Italian. Um, Both of her parents would say that they didn't teach them Italian because they didn't want them to know what they were saying when they were talking to one another. I,
Oh, interesting.
that I truly believe that the truth is because they didn't want their kids being called Dagos, and so
Ah,
my mom was Lucia, not Lucia. Uh, uh, my grandfather was became Carl, not Carmelo, which is kind of heartbreaking. So,
yeah, yeah.
um, uh, 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 yeah, strange. Yeah, strange things.
That's the
Um,
importance of names. No, that makes a lot of sense, and I think
so
there's a lot of validity to that. I think there's a very significant degree to which the power and the heft of language is forgotten.
yeah, definitely. The thing that occurs to me about it, right? Even so, the power of language. It has as much to do with the immersive work as anything, right? You hearing your name spoken in the way that you know it to be spoken um, says something to you differently from you being told "Hey you," or from someone saying Nathaniel or Nate. You have an innate uh, reaction to that.
Yeah,
Um,
this is true. This is true.
and see right there, that is that's a psychological curtain within an immersive experience. Um, that's a tool right there. Our fourth wall, depending on right how experiential versus immersive and interactive you want to get, our fourth wall is the experience of the person. What if a person is taken out of that experience? Then that's our the lights coming on and the curtains being pulled up. Do you understand? Do you feel me?
Yeah, no, that makes complete sense. It's moving someone from one headspace to another rather than moving a scene from one physical location to another, or
Yeah.
moving even just a setting from one place to another. If you think about the context of Sleep No More, where there's not necessarily interaction, although
Mhm.
I think it's a spectrum of degrees insofar as the way that you do shift a person from one headspace
Well,
to the
I,
next. But yeah,
I think Sleep No More is a part of the brilliance of its design is, to my understanding, they want you pointedly to make your own decisions.
yeah,
There's no through line provided for you. It's just up to you. If you and they try to make it so that if you want to just wander around and eat candy and read a book, then you can do that. If you want to follow and run someplace, you can do that. But it is up to you. Ultimately, the through line is up to you. But they've made it so that there is, you step into that world and you kind of have to mess up in order to you have to want to not to some degree to not be in that world in order to go out of it. If that makes sense. Um,
right, right. No, that
uh,
does make sense.
but they do not cater to an individual through line. They just give you whatever tools are there, but they don't, there's no, I'm just going to say the same thing over and over again. They want you to do the work of tying things together. As I experience it and as I understand it, which is great and fantastic in some ways. My being able to say your name, Sky, to be able to call to you and understand more about how you tick, even just in talking with you, and to truly adjust for that, that is an avenue that I become more and more fascinated by.
Yeah, certainly. The ways that you access slash onboard slash just shift someone out of their reality into the experience and
Oh,
access them where they are.
exactly. And I love that you said onboarding because so there's this common phrase, and I truly wish that I could remember the person because it was my friend Kyle Holmes, who's a great drama teacher. He's actually
Mm.
his kids are some of the first that I taught immersive workshops to. He met a guy whose name I don't remember who said that the common way to describe immersive theater is it starts when you start thinking about it, or it starts when you hear about it. It ends when you stop thinking about it. Um, so that that's the way that the best work begins and ends. For me,
Interesting.
onboarding
Interesting.
is a part of the experience, and I'm becoming more and more obsessed with it and excited by it to the point where uh, uh, with the piece that I'm working on right now, I'm obsessing over all of the augmentary material, which most people would be like, "Oh, you're obsessing over the marketing," but I'm like, "No, these are the different avenues that someone could come to this experience." Um,
Yeah,
you
the
coming
ways
to
that
the
you can
website
be
is
introduced. Um,
that's your first experience.
Shoot, what is it called? I'm blanking on the name. Blank Institute. It was like 2012 around that area in San Francisco. Which was it was the alternate reality game where the onboarding was basically someone basically induct you into the secret society by handing you the card.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know the name of that, but what you're talking about is very, very familiar. in LA, the Speakeasy Society has made a 2-year-long amazing piece that just wrapped up called the Kansas Collection, based on that very principle. There's a club, there's a great members only, quote unquote, club with immersive intertwined within it called Cloak and Dagger here. That is that same principle. Speakeasies are another wonderful behavioral pattern to tap into, again, in our culture, that allows people to be like, oh, I do this code and then I get in.
And it gives you that immediate insider dynamic that suddenly shifts the degree of things that you're willing to accept. In insofar as what's strange, once you feel like you're on the inside of something, I think it makes it a lot easier to be like, oh, okay, the rules here are different, and that's okay, because they're allowed to be different because not everybody is here.
Yeah, well, I'd add on to that to do the work even better, right? Because the experience then I would call that like that's your first point of contact. There's an actual immediate response that comes from the thing that you're reaching out to. You knock on the door with the shave and a haircut, and then you wait, and the door knocks back 2 bits. That's the first point of contact. Yeah. But everything has to expand beyond that, right? Another friend of mine, who was, I think it was Mikey Beatty. He's a fantastic immersive actor. He and I are playing around with working on something. He was talking about, Mikey, I'm pretty sure this was you. And if not, you can just say it was. And if not, Sky, I'll just, I'll embarrassingly say it wasn't Mikey that told me that.
Edit out in the show. What have you?
Or just addendum. Spencer's forgetful, and it wasn't Mikey. It was blank. But he was talking about Nintendo games. Mikey's a big Nintendo game player. And he talks about Mario, and the beauty of Mario, that the 8-bit Nintendo staple, is that in the first 3 seconds of playing, you've unlocked all of the secrets and know what you're doing, and you've gotten the response. So in other words, you not only know that you've entered into a new world, that not everyone's going to be here, but you know what you did in order to do it, and you know how you can do more of it going forward. And that becomes the knack of engagement in human play. That becomes the gamification. So for me, that onboarding experience, when you start playing with things online, that's the actual first point of contact. So if you can start getting them there, even subconsciously, then you've kind of planted the seed for an engagement that's deeper once they cross the threshold.
Yeah, most definitely. I really like that line of thinking, and I think that it attaches itself to a much more holistic view of the thing, instead of it being like red flags is a good example of that, where you eliminate the friction in this way. So like even just the kind of pictures that are on the site for that, it's like the outward presentation is part of that experience itself.
Exactly.
And it's really cool to hear you talk about that, and the fact that you've spent time and bandwidth considering that and trying to craft that and bring that into the experience as a whole thing. But also, I just love that is a topic of conversation because of how much more can be done with it once that conversation expands. All these little things, all these little threads of possibility that speak to so much more. And on that note, we will cap the first portion of our interview with Spencer Williams of Walk the Night Immersive. Next week, we will kick off with the new, interesting, experimental flavor of Make It Immersive. And again, this is all an experiment, so any thoughts or feedback that you might have, please drop us a line on our Instagram at Immersion Nation, or on the website contact form, of course. And until then, thank you for listening. Calling all immersive adventurers, explorers, connoisseurs, and artists. The immersive revolution is just beginning. All that is to say, we would love any feedback that you might have on the show. What do you want to hear more of, less of? Anyone in particular you'd like us to have on the show? I would love to hear your thoughts. So please rate us, review us, or just drop us a line on the website at immersionnation.com. I always love having conversations about this wide and wild world that we are both living in and creating. Once again, this is the Immersion Nation podcast. Thank you for joining us in this adventure.